You know, with the amount of money we're spending on air guns these days, up to $1,000, $2,000, $3,500, we ought to know something about the future and where we're going. This can help us in just about every part of our life. And the first thing is we must know is that the crystal ball is never crystal clear. But there's ways that we can find out about the crystal ball and what it might say to us. The SHOT Show is probably one of the best for me. The SHOT Show takes place in Las Vegas every year here in the month of January. Unfortunately, it's not open to the public. It's only open to dealers. And I was able to get in with under the category of media. Well, they wouldn't let me take a video. They wouldn't let me do a video in there showing some of the stuff. But it's all the manufacturers showing the latest and the best to all the dealers so that they might order more, I suppose. And so it would help us as we spend hundreds of dollars in this hobby of ours to know where air gunning is going. So let's talk about that for just a moment. I'm Dr. Russ, and we're in the dining room of my wife, Dr. Paula, who's allowed us to not only use this, but she's our camera person today because Renee, who often has that job, is on vacation. So thank you, Dr. Paula. She won't let me turn the camera around. When I was a kid, I would put my ear to the railroad track that was nearby, and we would find out during the course of a day of play if we could hear that train coming. And when we did, we'd put a penny or nickel on it, the rail, and get it squashed out. That was our only look into the future when I was a kid. But we had Daisy air guns, and I've got a couple here still in their boxes. And this is the Model 25. I haven't done a video on it yet. But I went from the Red Ryder to this because it had more power. And then later, a variety of pumps came out. Crosman entered the market, and Daisy stayed in the market and came up with a power line group, which often used a pump, pumping the forestock. But all in all, Daisy didn't stay with the market. And today she's at the very bottom rung of power, accuracy, I think. And that's a shame. It was good company. It was the only company, to my knowledge, in air guns. We had them, but pretty soon we saw new companies like Crosman and others come in who just had more and better. And so you and I, as we spend hundreds of dollars on air guns, we need to know what's going on. So we'll scratch Daisy from our list. My sources of information today, I'm watching AEA very carefully because the Chinese are making a lot of parts for a lot of air guns, and now they have their own air gun company. I suspect copying some of the other things and making a pretty good rifle. So AEA. I've watched Hatson for years because she brings out so many models. Here in Michigan, we got about 7 inches of snow last night, and one of the things we like to do up here is ride in snowmobiles. Polaris has more models than anybody, and so it's always good to see what they have going. Then there's the Yamahas, who I think have borrowed some engines off their motorcycles, and they've got the fastest motorcycles, but they don't have that many. Hatson is the one bringing out the most models these days in Turkey, and I'm watching what they're bringing out. They've got their ear to the rail too. At the SHOT Show, we found 2 unbelievable improvements with Daystate and the FX brand. These are really your Mercedes-Benzes, if you will, and I'll get into that. Let's talk about the FX Harmonic Balance. Well, they found out, I knew this already, But if you had a gun, this is a powder gun by Browning. It's a semi-automatic. And if you had it on sandbags hitting the bullseye of a target, and you just decided to touch it somewhere, touch it anywhere, the bullet holes would move on you. Just touching it. Isn't that interesting? Hold it a little farther back or a little farther forward, and the bullets would change. And so what Browning came up with is a harmonic balancer, and that's what this is. It's not a suppressor, it's not a silencer, but it has a dial here much like you'd find on a safe, and you can turn it, and all it is a weight, and based on whether you put a bipod on it, a sling, or whatever, you go to the target range and change that harmonic balancer at the top, and you get your bullets back into the center of the bullseye. I've used Browning, they call this a BOSS, Ballistic Optimization Shooting System, I think it's what it's called. And it works. It's expensive, but it works. Well, FX has decided to do that with air guns. And they are putting, because they see their customers putting all kinds of stuff on the guns, lasers, flashlights, bipods that go forward, bipods that go backwards, and that changes where that gun shoots. So watch over this next year. Towards the end of 2022, you'll see a weight on the end of those barrels that is adjustable and hopefully brings the slug or the pellet back into the bullseye. Daystate is another Mercedes-Benz in the air guns. These guns are very expensive. I actually don't own one. One day I'm sure I will, but I certainly have checked them out. I've certainly read everything I can get my hands on. And they're heading into another direction of the future, and that's electronics. Typically right on the wood piece, the stock, you can look at a screen, and you can change the velocity of your pellet by touching that screen. You can change the energy that those pellets and slugs hit downrange by touching that screen. They're really quite adept. So you don't have to go taking the gun apart and the bottom and the top off and the barrel off and all these things to make some adjustments. No, it's just right there. And of course it has a price tag. You'll see the electronic screens coming out already on two of their guns. The Red Fox, I think, and the Red Wolf. I'll get those names right by the end of this video, but there's two that we're already seeing that on. What do I see from Hatson? Well, they're bringing out 2-3 guns a year. For years I would get a Hatson gun, and that barrel was 17 inches. And then another couple years, all the barrels were 19.7 inches. You've certainly heard me say, oh, if it doesn't got a 20-inch barrel, it's a deal killer for me. I don't have a problem with 19.7, but 20 inches is what I'm looking for. Why? Why would I look? Remember, inside the barrel is rifling, and that's what turns the pellet or the slug much like a football when you throw it in the air. A spinning football will hit its target much better than just a lobbed football with a bunch of air behind it. It's got to be set into spinning, much like a top or a gyroscope. It's got to be spinning, and it gets very, very accurate. And when the Army, and I was a member of the Army, when the Army developed guns for the war I went to, Vietnam, guess how long the barrel was on the M16? 20 inches. Army engineers determined that with a 20-inch barrel, you were very, very accurate with those rounds. And, oh, I suppose there's nothing better than a barrel that's 50 feet long and comes right up to your heart, well, now we've got a very accurate gun for 50 feet. But in the rhyme of reason and practice, 20 inches is where I see the barrels get good. Now, I said Hatson. Look at this Hatson. Here's a Hatson. I don't mean a Hatson. This is an AEA. Coming back down the line, an AEA. Let's talk about barrels for a moment. My spread of my hand's about 9.5 inches, so the barrel starts here. I'll start here. 9, 9, 9. We're like 27. In fact, I think one of the AEA barrels is 32 inches long. And that's not counting a suppressor, which is not a barrel. In this particular one, they're gone beyond the 20 inches. And that makes them very, very accurate when you want to shoot prairie dogs and woodchucks and things that are out 150 and even 200 yards. This happens to be a 357. So it shoots that 35 caliber. And I heard one man from a friend of mine who's in competition who says that right now competitive shooting starts with the 17 caliber, but there's some competition at 22 and 25, and the highest that competition goes to in air guns is 30. So we now have a 30 caliber. He said that's going to change to the 357 someday in the future. Now, whether he's right or wrong, I don't know. But this is a 357. I've jumped over the 25 to the 357 so that will be my air gun. Notice that we have a tank of air down here. And not only in the stock, I have another tank of air up here. The only thing this gun was missing was a regulator. But I understand that regulators are coming. And regulators will be out in February with a new gun called the Challenger Pro. And I'll come back to that gun in a minute. But here's a gun that AEA Chinese are watching all of the manufacturers and this new Chinese company trying to beat them all and come out with pretty interesting stuff. So I watch AEA, I watch Hatson. I've told you what the day state and the FX are. This barrel idea is extremely important. At the SHOT Show, I found an old game that is always at every show, car shows, whatever, but they want to copy what's already there. Here happens to be a Gladius, and as you can see right down here, 3 magazines of pellets are right here for me the moment that this one's out. So I'm good for 4. When this gun is regulated, it'll shoot 4 magazines, and that's good. So they're looking for ways. Hatson has a couple of guns where you just put it into the side. They want to make a big deal over adjustable stocks and cheek pieces. Well, I think the adjustable stock has merit. I'm not sure that the cheek does, and here's why. The moment that you get a scope, it's got to get this big end lens is what you want to have as big as possible. And if it's an AOL, you get to adjust it to the range, even taking that distortion out. So right now this gun is set for about 35 yards. It makes it more accurate. But this end piece, which happens to be 50 millimeters, back here, it goes up to, now this scope goes up to 20 power. So it's 20 power, but it's a 50 millimeter lens. These lenses get so big they want to start touching things. Even when you get mounts that are as high a mount as you possibly can get. This is the highest mount that I can get. And I still came really close. I've actually taken a file and ground off some of these Picatinny rails just to let this front AOL fit in. So they want that. If the gun comes with a scope, they're still putting cheap scopes. I didn't see any change from that. So I like to buy a gun without the scope, and then I buy the scope second and put it on. I don't like to shoot unless I've got a good suppressor. Now these moderated barrels are there, and I think that the break barrels and the spring barrel guns that are out there, which makes up a huge amount of all the air guns, are not that loud because they're 17 and 22 caliber. But the moment we get into bigger caliber, we need suppressors. I need them for my neighbors, and I need it when I'm hunting. I don't want this deer, this wild hog, and shooting it to send out a message to the rest of the deer and the rest of the wild hogs. So when I'm hunting, I'm silent, and I like that. I think that's the big thing that air guns has over powder guns. They're silent, and you can shoot them 12 months of the year. You don't take that 270 Browning right there and start shooting woodchucks in your backyard. You'll have the police there in a nanosecond. But I can shoot it with this 357, and that's a good thing. Because for a while, I mean, first of all, it's hard to make a barrel. And there are people who know how to do it and people who don't. There's barrels with really precise rifling in it, and some that it was just ground out, and I hope it's right. For a while, Benjamin Crossman offered you two choices: one of their barrels, let's just call it a decent barrel, or a Walther. I think they're made in England. And it's very expensive, and you paid an extra $50, $75 for it, and I did, and it was a great barrel. I think Daystate may have gotten Walther in the beginning, but today they're known for making their own barrel. That's a good one. And FX has come out with a barrel that I think is interesting. You know these cameras that can go up into your heart vessels and check your heart out and all that? Well, they've got them that go down a barrel and let you check out the rifling in a barrel. And FX has a barrel now that at first you say, I don't think this thing has rifling. But when you look really close, there is rifling. It's something different, and it works. Those pellets and slugs do very, 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 very well. Now, regardless of what gun you have, you've heard this phrase, shoot 200-300 rounds so that it gets leaded in. Some people think that means so that instead of the rifling, and let's just say that the rifling again, I'm not a great artist, but here's the round barrel, and here's the pellet coming out, and it's touching these riflings, and that's what makes that spin. And sometimes people think, well, we want to shoot 200 or 300 rounds to get it leaded in. I had a guy say to me, that means this: just fill in those grooves with lead. That's what it means. And I said, but why would they go to the trouble of rifling it if what we need to do is just shoot 300 rounds and let it in? That's not what it means. If you use one of those cameras and a magnifying glass, you would find that when a barrel is ground and the rifling is there, it's rough. So when a bullet, a pellet, a slug goes down it, it's going down it like it's sandpaper in it. Sandpaper is not good. It slows it down. Oh, it might grab it and make it start to spin correctly, but at a huge cost of slowing the pellet down. So what leading means is not filling the grooves up. What leading in means is polishing. Every time you shoot a lead pellet down it, it takes those little pieces off. Maybe fills some little craters like you find on the moon, and fills those, but for the most part it's polishing and taking any rough edges off of this rifling. That's what it means. The Mercedes-Benz of rifles, they send polishing agents, a liquid with sand in it, and they polish the inside of those barrels. So that's done for you, and you take it out of the box and boom, you hit a bullseye. That's cool. Of course, it's $1,000 more, but that's what you're getting. If you get one of these, you're going to have to let it in yourself, and that's okay. We're polishing out that barrel. Perhaps in our future, all air guns will be polished. Won't that be nice? I promised you the name of those Daystate guns. One is the Delta Fox, and one is the Red Fox. They've got a lot of this electronic gear on it already. I know that the first of a big distributor out in Arizona, I think, or Utah, called Utah Airguns, has been promised the first group of FX with these harmonic balancers. One of the guys was bragging that 500 of them are coming to them. So that's what you'll see there. Watch for these longer barrels. And one of the things I looked for but I didn't see, but it comes to an industry sooner or later, and that is that they merge together. Somebody says, you know, for me to have this, it'd just be better if I buy them. Or for this one to have that, maybe it's just better to buy them, or these, or whatever. And so watch for this consolidation of industries. I noticed that Crossman makes some pretty good break barrel rifles. They're now having them made by another Turkish company, a little smaller than Hatsan, called Kral, K-R-A-L, which in that language means king or royalty. So we've got so many. I would count on this one, AEA, doing very well with their low price of manufacturing. Hatsan has the right attitude. This attitude is dead. And these two are trying to remain as the top of the lines. So whatever comes, our videos here at Dr. Russ Air Rifle Adventures will try to bring that news to you. I'm not loyal to anybody. I'm loyal to you. Let's get the best features for the best price. If you watch some of our other videos, by the way, you just hit that little oval circle of me and you access our whole channel. And you'll get information on targets, buying refurbished guns, refurbished scopes, and hopefully the future. Give us a thumbs up. And if you want to make sure that you see one coming up, I'm just waiting for the weather. I haven't had it here in Detroit yet, but I bought some cantaloupes. They're in the garage. And somebody gave me an idea, and I bought them, but I got about 4 cans of shaving cream, and you hit them, and behind them you have a lit candle. And when that gas goes out, it creates a little bit of a fire. So we'll do a little firestorm, if you will, if my viewer has given me the facts. We'll try that, some cantaloupes, some of the great knockdown targets that I have. And of course, I love this Coroplast board that allows you to cut or put targets wherever you like them. Nice wire to stick it in the ground or even stick it in snow. That's all coming. But if you want to be first in line to get that information, subscribe. See you next week.